So this video is going to go over casting a little bit. The first thing we need is a program to work in. So I'm going to go to my NetBeans program and grab my old test project. So remember, all files have to live inside of some kind of project. And rather than making another project, since I'm just throwing some code up for the purpose of showing what it does, I'm just going to click New File. And the first option it gives me is what project I want to live in. I'm going to have it be in the test project folder. It is a Java class, but I'd like it to have a main class too. So I'm going to go down and take this option. That way I can run this program independent of other Java files in the project. Now we'll go to next. I'll give it a name. How about casting demo? And that should do it. Actually, let's put the package as test project 2. So we'll throw it the same package. Inside of a project, you can have multiple packages. And just to keep it nice and neat, we'll throw it in the same package. So I finished doing that, and I now have a new file to work with. So like I said, this is a demo on casting. And what casting means is to treat one piece of information like a different piece of information, or a different type, I should say. So let's give ourselves a couple pieces of information to start with. Let's get an integer called num that equals 7. And let's get a double named des for decimal, which is equal to about 3.5. And let's get well, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these 70 and 3.5. You'll see why in a moment. And I'm also going to get a character. And let's have the character equal to A. Just a capital A. All right. Now, right now, I could print all these. Just .out.print line. And let's do num. We'll give ourselves a space. And then we got dec. And then let's have our character. Oops, I forgot to give my character name. Let's call it letter. Let. Plus let. Okay. So this should say 73.5a. And we're going to end up leaving this up here just so it's a reference the whole time. Now, I'm going to intentionally have a problem right now because if I go up here and I hit this run button at the top, I'm not going to see num, dec, and let. I'm going to see hello class. And what just happened was I said run project. That's what the green arrow says. My project is test project 2. And when you hit run project, it says run the file with the same name, which is this file, test project 2, that just prints out hello class. Since we want to run this file, casting demo, I actually need to do one of two things. I could hit Shift F6, or I can right click here and hit run file. So I'm going to do that. Run file. And I get 73.5a. Okay. Now let's play around a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is let's, instead of just printing num the way it is, let's try to tell num to be a little bit different. So we're going to say, hey num, we know that you are an integer, but we'd like you to pretend to be a character. The way you do that is by putting the type you'd like it to act like in parentheses right in front of the variable name. So I'm saying print num, just like I did the line before, but by putting char here, it's saying don't act like an int, act like a character. And we know from talking about binary and data representation of primitive types that all characters are really just numbers, and those numbers map to characters based on where they fall in the ASCII table. So if we go and run this program again, we're not going to see the number 70. We're going to see the letter F, because 70 in the ASCII table is the letter F. Now, it's important to note that we did not change num. In fact, if I were to take this line and print it above that first line, and run it again, the second time you see num, it'll still say 70. See? So casting doesn't change a variable. It just says treat it differently for one instant. Now, this is very convenient. It allows us to do lots of neat tricks, and it comes in handy a lot of times. But there are limits to it. For instance, I couldn't say treat num like, say, let's say a Boolean. Well, maybe I can. Let's see what it does. If I say treat num like a Boolean, well, 70 doesn't really translate into a Boolean real well. So if I mouse over, I'm getting an error. It says incompatible types. Int cannot be converted to a Boolean. So you can't just say treat one piece of information like any other. There has to be a little bit of underlying sense there. I could, however, say treat it like a double. Now if I run my program, you'll notice that when it prints 70, it says 70.0. It's now treating the number 70 like a double, so it adds that .0, that decimal point, to indicate that it is in fact a double and not a integer anymore. So let's take this idea and play with it a little bit. So I'm going to do system.out.println, and let's just print the result of num divided by, how about 11? So we'll take num divided by 11. So since num is 70, 11 goes into it 6 times with 4 left over. So you might say we should get a number something like 6.36, yada, 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 3636. It would go on for a while. That's what you would expect. But let's run it on the file. And what we end up getting is 6 even. What happened here was an int, num, was divided by another int, 11. We did integer division, so it just said how many times does 11 go into num, how many integer times. Anything extra, it drops off. What if I were to say take that result and cast the whole result to a double? Now notice there's a set of parentheses around num divided by 11. So order of operation says do this first, get the result, and then cast it. Well, in this example, it's still going to be 6, except it'll come out 6.0. There you go, 6.0. What happened in this instance is we did integer division and then said treat the result like a double. If I were to get rid of these parentheses, I now have double num divided by 11. Now I'm no longer casting the result to a double. I'm casting num to a double. Once num becomes a double, it's no longer 70, it's 70.0, just like it was above. A double divided by an integer does double division, giving me a double result. There's my answer down there. Now, it's fun to kind of play with casting. One of the things you do have to worry about, though, is mixing and matching types in statements. So let's take this statement again, and let's just say, let's print out dex, or dec in this case. If I were to say something like dec equals num plus dec, plus dec, I would have no problem because it's perfectly acceptable to add a double to an integer and save it as a double. What's not acceptable is to take an integer and a decimal and add them together. And what I can't do is I can't cast this up ahead. That doesn't work either. You can only cast while you're working, not while you're saving. So that's a brief intro to casting. We'll talk more about this in class.